Hey there everybody, it's Mark Curley. I'm back with another video. You know, I've done a series of videos showing my old sketchbooks from Taiwan, but I've never shown this old sketchbook that I made back in Japan. This was in the early 1990s. I thought I would include a photo here that I took. This was just before I left the country. I decided to go around and take photos of people that I knew or had seen on a regular basis. This was the guard outside the bank. But there you see 26-year-old Mark Curley, I think, something like that, back when I was teaching English in Japan. And another thing I thought I would show you for old time's sake is my Japanese English dictionary that I used back then, a Webster's, but just because it got so beat up and so well used over time, and I would write down new words that people taught me, you know, like in conversation, weird random things here and there. But yeah, I thought that would give you some sense of how determined I was to learn how to speak Japanese. But let's go ahead and get into this sketchbook. It's smaller than the ones that I used in Taiwan. I think that's because I wanted it to be a little more portable. And let's go with this first one here. I was doing the same kind of approach that I did in Taiwan, which is to say not using any pencil guidelines. I would just have a ink pen and go right in and start doing drawings. This was from a nearby neighborhood. I lived in my own apartment they set me up with there in Morioka, Iwate, Japan. And I was always so impressed, I still am, with the architecture of Japan. This is just a private home, but these rooftops that look like temple rooftops to me, so beautiful. And apparently very expensive to replace, I'm told. Now, I did this very cartoony second page. I think my idea was I was going to try to do a mix of realistic drawing and cartoony drawing for this sketchbook, but I don't think it really worked out that way. I was focusing on this idea of white cars that, at least back in the early 90s, Japanese loved to buy white cars. Apparently they had the maximum resale value, and so I did a little cartoony thing. Also, I wanted to introduce the idea of full color, and periodically I did bring full color into this sketchbook, but for the most part, black and white you're going to see here today. This one from the Hashimoto Bijutsukan, the art museum. That was way up in the hills outside of Morioka, and I'm pretty sure what I did is I drew a picture of this painting that I saw at the museum, and then I made little notes of the different colors, and then after I went back home to my apartment, I pulled out my watercolors and added color to what had been a black and white illustration. And to give credit where it is due, this is resounding upwards. Sadly, I don't know if I got the artist's name, so I'm not giving credit where credit is due. My apologies. But it was a beautiful enough painting that I wanted to copy it. And let's move on now to the next one. This also from the Hashimoto Museum, Art Museum. Woman's Head. This one I did get the credit properly written by Tanabe Itaru. 1953, looks like. And I don't think the original picture was pen and ink. I think it was probably either a painting or charcoal or something like that, and I just turned it into a pen and ink illustration for the sketchbook, but I was pretty happy with how that one turned out. And let's move on to the next one. This one from the park, the local park called Iwate Park, named after the prefecture. I was always fascinated by these Japanese pine trees, and I think shaped by human hand, a lot of them, kind of like a bonsai tree, making the branches go in different directions. Really kind of becomes almost an artistic statement in and of itself. But I challenged myself to try to get every single one of those pine needles into my drawing. And let's move on to the next one. This one I think I got interrupted. I was probably seated somewhere. In fact, it says down here, April 14th, bottle in display window, Hanamaki Hotel. And I probably started to draw something, and then it was probably like a big group thing where they took all of the teachers out for dinner somewhere, and they probably said, "Crilly, come on, we gotta go." So we'll never know how that would have looked had I had the chance to finish it. And now for the next one. Now there was a university nearby, Iwate University. I used to go over there, and I would go to the big cafeteria and sit and get work done, and I must have seen some students and decided to quickly sketch them into the book. Now you'll notice that it's kind of a lighter touch. I think that's because I knew I wouldn't have much time to finish it. You know, one of the guys might just get up and leave or whatever, and I wanted to draw them while I still could. So this reminds me a lot of the stuff that I did in Taiwan. And if you're curious, I'm going to be sure to put links to my Taiwan sketchbook videos at the end of this one. And another one from Iwate University, they were doing some kind of what they call a bunkasai, a culture festival in Japan. I guess in America we would call it an open house, where the community is invited into the high school or college or whatever to see what they have to offer as a school and maybe show some of the clubs. And this guy was in the rock and roll club. I don't know that for a fact, but I put a little more time into this. I must have felt confident that he was going to be there for a while. Playing Stairway to Heaven, or whatever it was. So yeah, a little more detail. But again, you never know when you're going to have to just song's over, got to end my drawing. So it's always tricky to draw from life in a situation like that. Here's a kind of funny one. Man at Iwate Bank. Looks a little like Alfred Hitchcock or something. April 19th, interesting because my job would have started April 1st. So this would have been about 19 days after I got to Japan. I was still fresh, getting new impressions. And I'll bet what I did is I drew the outline, the basics, and then added cross-hatching after he was no longer there. It's hard to believe that he would have sat there so patiently, unless I told him, "Sir, don't move. I'm drawing you from behind." And I assure you I did not do that. I'm weird. I'm weird, but I'm not that weird. And let's do a couple more maybe before we wind this one down. Here's the cherry blossoms at Takamatsu Pond. My apartment was very near this pond called Takamatsu, and I used to go over there quite frequently. And because it was early April or mid-April, what is this, April 21st, you can see the cherry blossoms, the famed Japanese cherry blossoms. Were in bloom. I do remember that. That would have been my first time seeing the cherry blossoms in Japan. I think I got to see them 3 times just because I was in Japan for 2 years and 2 months, and those extra 2 months allowed me to see one more time the cherry blossoms before I headed home. And yeah, let's maybe do one more. Oh, this one is kind of interesting. These kerosene stoves that they had in Iwate. You know, there was no central heating for the most part. They didn't use central heating in homes in Iwate, even though it was freezing cold up there, and arguably like northern Michigan or something, heavy snow. But I wanted to draw one of these kerosene stoves, and sometimes they'd make them kind of dual purpose so that you could put a kettle on top, boil water, while you're also heating, heating the room. But yeah, the smell of kerosene, I still to this day will associate with my time in Iwate, because yeah, that was the only way of keeping your apartment warm, and you had to go to the kerosene shop and refill a tank and canister or whatever, bring it home so that you could continue heating your home. And I think I'm going to wind it down here. But there should be enough to do at least 2 or 3 more videos showing you, as I did this time, every single page in the book, taking you back through my days in Japan all those years ago. But let's go ahead and wind this video down. I want to thank you all for watching it. I really hope you enjoyed it. And I'll be back with another one real soon.